So it looks like we started to reach the majority of our participants today. So I'll go ahead and start us off. Welcome everybody. Thank you for attending our webinar today with Alan Brown, Principal of WolfBrown. And as I'm sure many of you are familiar through his work with the Initiative for Financial and Creative Health as one of our consultants. I'd like to also introduce our panelists that we will have today. Bonnie Mendoza, who is the Executive Vice President and CFO for the Phoenix Zoo. Jake Pinholster, who is the founding director of the Media and Immersive Experience Center at Arizona State University, as well as Joseph Bechter, who is the president and general director of Arizona Opera. So I'm glad everybody's here today, and we're going to have a great session. So take it away, Alan.
Thanks, Julie. And I'm Alan Brown. For those of you who I've not met, I believe, Tammy, I've just crossed the 10-year anniversary of working with the Flynn Foundation. And it's been such a pleasure to get to know all of you and your organizations and the amazing work you do, and to be a partner and a witness to the Initiative for Financial and Creative Health. Our colleagues at TDC do a great job on financial health, and I'm kind of here to stir up the pot on creative health. So I have, we've got, wow, a 2-hour session, and I just want to acknowledge that that's a long time to be on Zoom. So I encourage you all to stand up, walk around. If you need to take a break, just mute yourself and turn off your camera and do whatever you need to do. Hopefully I won't need to take a break, but I'll let you know if I do, and we'll plan accordingly. You know, as some of you may know, we here at WolfBrown have been deeply thinking about COVID and audiences and visitors and their readiness to return to cultural programs during and after the COVID pandemic. And we've been doing that for 2 years. And as we, I won't say come out of the pandemic, because we're obviously still in it and probably will be for a while, or recovering the last 10 or 15% of audiences has become very clear that they may never come back. But it's become very clear that we need to look forward and really address the question, what kinds of experiences, programming, must we offer in the next sort of 3 to 5 years to attract the next generation of audiences? And that really feels to me like the salient question right now, rather than looking backwards and trying to recover sort of the last 10 or 20%. So we have been thinking a lot here about immersive experiences. And let me just set this up before I go into PowerPoint. Was Immersive Van Gogh in Phoenix? I'm sure it was. Yeah. You all go see it, some of you, I hope, as painful as that might have been for some of you. I went here in Detroit, and I've been a fan, a lightweight fan of installation art and immersive experiences. I confess I've been to Burning Man 3 times. You know, enjoy occasionally going to see big pop artists perform in arenas just to see the show, see what people are looking at. You know, I see the world through the eyes of audiences, and it's important to me to be a witness to what's happening in our culture. And when I went to see Van Gogh, and I walked out, and my partner turned to me and said, "Wow, I think I really learned something about Mr. Van Gogh." And I thought, "Oh, wow, that's an outcome that a lot of museums would love." And I just thought that there's something happening in our culture that I don't understand in the public embracing of immersive experiences. It's just not been at the top of my radar map. And I really felt like I needed to. And with the great good fortune, I I'm a guest lecturer once a year at an arts administration program in Milan, Italy, that's affiliated with the opera house La Scala. It's called the Accademia Teatro alla Scala. It's mostly a conservatory for singers and dancers, but they have a great little arts administration program. And one of their students approached me and was in an internship. And I just said, Marco, I want you to spend the next 6 to 9 months researching immersive entertainment experiences, the history, where they've come from, how far they've come, what's happening now worldwide in this area so that I can be educated and then hopefully share. So what you're seeing today is a share out of Marco's research, or a fraction of Marco's research. He's very prolific. And by the way, Marco is on the call with us today. He's here again in Detroit, and continues his work with us. So that's just a little bit of the background. Let me move into the PowerPoint now. And just say that I have just an unbelievable amount of content to share with you. It's going to be a little overwhelming. We are recording today's session, and Julie will make that recording available to you. Unfortunately, I can't share my slide deck because it's 2 gigabytes with embedded videos and tons and tons of images. But the recording is available to you, and that should allow you to access any of the information we cover today. So just consider this an overview, a primer on immersive entertainment experiences. There's so much content, there's so much more to dig much more deeply on. I'm going to skip over a lot of it, but hopefully we'll come out of this with just a provocation for all of you to think about your own programming and what role immersive programming may or may not have in your own portfolios. So that is pretty much where we are. So, oh, I forgot that Marco gave us a new title slide here. Phenomenological analysis with an overview of new programming in immersive formats. So I just want to say to start with, we are not advocating for any particular format or technology. We've discovered almost every day, we discover some commercial producer or nonprofit doing some immersive project, and we're trying to keep up with it all and just catalog it and classify it and make sense of this crazy, complicated world of programming. Our research was organized in 2 parts. The history, you know, I wanted to be able to address the question that some of you may have: is this a fad? Is this a fleeting thing that will, you know, be gone as soon as it came? And so we looked at the history. Marco did very deep research on the sociological, psychological, and cognitive aspects of immersive experiences in order to situate our current moment in this longer cultural trajectory. And then we looked at current practice. Formats and technologies, and as much as possible. And of course, you know, we started with Van Gogh, right? And then it just mushroomed from there. So what is an immersive experience? I think, you know, most people kind of know. And it's fascinating to me that the public in general kind of knows what an installation is, or what an immersive experience is. But then if you think about it, people have been going to IMAX theaters for decades, right? People have been going to theme parks for decades. And actually it's not new at all. But the perceptive sensation of being surrounded by a different reality created in parallel space in the here and now, right? I think we can all agree this is immersive. You know, there's so many linguistic challenges around this whole area. Is installation art the same as immersive experience. Not every installation necessarily is an immersive experience, but often they are. But these are experiences that give you the impression of being in an artificial environment of some sort, and of having an experience. And that is such an important word, experience, that involves sensorial stimulation, maybe hitting on 3 or 4 of the senses. So I just want to establish that as a basic definition. The history we'll go through very quickly. We found the original Lascaux caves in France, you know, the original artworks on the walls, drawings were probably used to teach younger family members about hunting, but perhaps were the earliest examples of immersive experiences. Certainly the frescoes in Pompeii were really designed to surround the viewer and immerse them in at least their field of vision on 4 walls. The Pantheon obviously was designed as an immersive space in terms of its certainly interaction with the sun. The use of stained glass, the cathedrals themselves and their stained glass were obviously immersive experiences, actually intended to humble and even intimidate people over the centuries. This, I think, was a pivotal moment in 1420, the initial illusion of depth, the linear perspective of a horizon line in a drawing that alludes to infinite space on a 2-dimensional sheet of paper. And that opened up new possibilities. Obviously, the Sistine ceiling is still an immersive space dating back centuries. Fast forward to the electric age. Mr. Volta, the Italian physicist, invented the electric battery that began a long process of changing kind of everything. I don't know, some of you in the theater may know the illusion of Pepper's Ghost. It is a special, early special effect where an image was reflected through a mirror and up onto a piece of thin fabric that gave the illusion of a ghost. And that dates back to 1862. Some say that Bayreuth was a step towards immersion in that it kind of broke down the relationship between the audience and the stage, in that the audience was surrounding the stage in a kind of a new way and brought them closer to the action. Some of you have seen the panoramas, the dioramas, the miniature installations of cities, topographical art. 1957 came Sensorama. Some of you may be old enough to remember that, which combined multiple technologies, gave the illusion of a fully 3-dimensional world. And then most recently, Mr. Ivan Sutherland, the father of computer graphics, developed the first sort of a head-mounted display system, which now he's credited as the father of virtual reality. So my point in sharing all this with you actually is immersive experiences have been around for millennia. They are not new. And with every new technology, every breakthrough, immersive experiences have adapted to capitalize on new technologies and really moved forward what is possible in terms of arts and culture. So now, of course, we're in the digital age, which some agree started in 20 years ago. And we're kind of on 2 tracks here, physical and digital. So in the physical world, this, you know, the peak of live exhibitions, festivals, over the past 20 years have been amazing. And then when COVID hit, what happened in the physical trajectory was a complete stop. And we are all living that and going back to trying to get back, right? In the digital space, we had the development of social media platforms back in 2006 and apps. 2013 it was a peak for gaming technologies, extended reality, augmented reality. We have a generation of gamers who are now adults in the entertainment market. And when COVID hit, what happened in the digital space is maximum growth, maximum investment in new artistic and entertainment experiences. So where are we headed? Of course, the metaverse. Mr. Zuckerberg has bet his firm on that, and others have as well. We're not going to spend much time talking about the metaverse. It's a pretty complicated topic, except to say that most of the technologies that make up the metaverse are already here and are being used. So let's just look at a couple of the macro trends and drivers of public adoption of immersive experiences. The biggest being the transition from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. So those of you who remember Web 1.0, I was there when email hit in the first place, exchange of information. 2.0, we're all living that now, connecting people really. And Web 3.0 is really the convergence of physical and digital worlds. Timing wise, supposedly 2026. So you can see kind of we're more than halfway through that transition from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. And that's kind of the time range of our analysis. The other progression, and this is just very kind of cognitive science-ish, is this shift in perception from mental immersion to sensorial immersion. And I can't emphasize this enough, how important this is. Mental immersion is experiencing a work of art or a work of entertainment and being transported and in your mind going to another world, reading a book, sitting around a campfire telling stories, watching a concert, seeing a work of art. And as over time and this progression, we are moving towards sensorial immersion, continuous rise in engagement levels of all kind. And what this actually leads to is this sense of presence, this sense of being present in the experience. Whereas we have been in this transport where you're being transported to another world, sensorial immersion leads to this feeling of presence, which is a critical transition on a cognitive level. And this chart, thanks to Marco, consolidates about 20 years of academic literature on this transition from mental immersion to sensorial, from transport to presence, all of the static to interactive, from isolation to community and shared experiences, from distance to immediacy, and so forth. And hopefully this all is intuitive and you're experiencing this yourselves in your own thinking about your own programming. But it's important to lay the groundwork for this whole presentation as a reflection of phenomenological drivers that are changing in terms of technologies and how people interact with content. So that's really the briefest of introductions, the history and the drivers of this. And now I'm going to race through an overview of contemporary practice in immersive experiences. So we started out from Van Gogh and wound up investigating 6 domains of immersive practice: architecture, and real estate development, even fashion, theme parks, nightlife, and installations. I'm only just going to touch on those and then spend most of the time on visual art and performing arts as you all, as your domains. But I think it's important to understand that immersive experiences are not just limited to the entertainment or cultural sector or sphere. They are a part of our culture now and showing up in many, many places in terms of contemporary life. So quickly, architecture and real estate development. Surely you're all aware of the extraordinary technologies, projection technologies that are available now. Lighting and art festivals, we kind of talk about, this is public art, I suppose. Lighting as a form of entertainment, public art has really taken on a huge significance worldwide. Light art festivals have become a critical feature of civic life. We found over 100 of these festivals that draw on this video mapping technology. These are just a few of them. My favorite is the Vivid Sydney Festival. If you've never seen it, they have a great website. I actually want to go next year. They commission artists to light the exteriors of skyscrapers and monuments and buildings in Sydney and build a whole festival around that. Gorgeous technology. We have a wonderful summary video here that just captures images from a few of the world's leading light festivals. It's extraordinary, the intensity of the projection and the ability to map it onto three-dimensional structures, facades of buildings. If you've never seen this sort of thing, you really need to. I believe this is, yeah. Okay, let's move on. So lighting as a form of public art is out there. It's been embraced broadly. I think probably this feeds into public interest in immersive exhibitions. One of the projects I want to call your attention to was a project the Los Angeles Philharmonic mounted a couple years ago on the occasion of their 100th anniversary. They commissioned the Turkish digital artist Refik Anadol to make a work of digital art that they would project onto the exterior of Disney Concert Hall. And you see a couple of still images here. I really want you to see this. This is really an extraordinary example of public art and actually adaptive reuse of cultural facilities. So the input for Mr. Anadol's art was the archives of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And he used artificial intelligence software to create what you see here. I mean, look at that. I can't imagine how much the LA Phil paid to set up those projectors on the outside of their hall that really covered every available inch of the exterior of their building. And you can't help but watch this and think, you know, what if concerts happening on the inside of the hall were actually broadcast on projectors to the exterior of the hall, and the best ticket in the house was from the top of the parking lot across the street. Also, We're starting to see new kinds of entertainment spaces come online, immersive entertainment spaces. This is already happening here, very integrated with technology. On the top here, you see a traditional arena. On the bottom here, you see an image of a new immersive space. Purpose-built immersive venues. The image you see on the right here is a drawing of a venue that is currently being constructed. But it's a whole new model for entertainment spaces that not only accommodates an audience and artists, but also essentially is a shopping mall. You know, when airports became retail experiences, the next generation of venues will also be retail experiences. And of course, Las Vegas. So if you don't know about this project, go to the website, msgsphere.com. It's an unbelievable project. Madison Square Garden Entertainment is collaborating with several casinos in Las Vegas. They've raised $1.8 billion. The MSG Sphere is half constructed. At this point, it's a dome-shaped facility that will seat 18,000 people with another 5,000 standing. And we'll surround the audience with 270 degrees of LED mapping technology, and then every seat will have its own sound system. And this kind of IMAX on steroids, you know, it's just kind of mind-blowing. I don't even understand how they're going to program it, like what kinds of programming they're going to have. That would capitalize on this new technology, but we will find out soon enough because this is scheduled to open next year. And Area 15 is another existing space in Las Vegas. It's kind of an immersive playground. Inside of Area 15 are a number of immersive spaces, including a Meow Wolf collaboration called Omega Mart, a huge installation that takes advantage of their brilliant artistic work. Another space called the Illuminarium. So my friends, my concern about this is that people in Phoenix will save their money and go to Las Vegas for entertainment. I mean, that's already happening. Las Vegas long ago became an entertainment destination, but what you're seeing now with this billions of dollars of investment during COVID is a whole new level of attraction that I understand is a competitive threat to the nonprofit sector nationwide. In Toronto, we're getting an esports arena, a enormous venue with 7,000 seats dedicated to esports, which seems counterintuitive. But apparently the need for the public to gather together physically, even around esports, is enough of a driver to invest in these kinds of facilities, which will also have an entertainment. We're starting to see real estate developers around the world actually create immersive communities. This example is in Saudi Arabia, Qiddiya, billions of dollars in investment. It is an immersive community that will become an economic driver at the national level for Saudi Arabia. And they hired Philippe Gass, who was a Disney veteran, to oversee its development. We don't have time to watch that video. It's in the middle of the desert. It's wild. But closer to home, in Anaheim, California, the Samueli family is investing $3 billion in a 95-acre mixed-use community that is basically a live entertainment district. That will be completed in about 5 years from now. And Justin Martin, the creative director of Meow Wolf, is the general director of this. All right, so now we're getting whole real estate developments designed by artists as immersive entertainment places. So immersive experiences are not just for entertainment. Actually, now they want us to live in immersive communities. Maybe we can watch just a few seconds of this OC Vibe video. It's built around the Honda arena. Okay. And then, sorry, let me just move on here. Disney, of course, has their immersive community on the drawing boards called Cotino, Story Living by Disney Community. Maybe you saw this was covered in the New York Times about a month ago. It's in Rancho Mirage, California, in the Coachella Valley, which is sort of deliciously ironic. This will be a community where people will choose to live, and which will be an immersive, marketed as an immersive experience. We don't have time to watch their very slick promo video. And finally, the example I give here is the Zaha Hadid studio is creating an immersive virtual city where you will be able to visit with as an avatar and enjoy all that it has to offer in the metaverse. So all of this is just to say that the spaces for live experiences and immersive experiences are transitioning. We have a facility issue in that most of our facilities are not designed for immersive experiences. Taking a typical concert hall, it's very difficult to convert it into a space for projections. And we really have to sort out what kinds of facilities we need, if they're permanent or temporary. And so forth. So fashion, I'll go very quickly through here. Of course, fashion is first to the game with branded immersive experiences. They need to keep their brands fresh and cutting edge. Balenciaga had a partnership with Fortnite on some three-dimensional billboards that really pushed the boundaries. It's kind of twisted, if you ask me. So commercial advertising. All right, Bulgari made a beautiful installation on the plaza outside of Il Duomo in Milan. They basically created an immersive fashion show. That's Refik Anadol, by the way. This is another collaboration with the same artist that the LA Phil used. Okay, so marketing in the fashion world is becoming immersive. Sorry, let me just move ahead. Burberry, the stodgy British brand, has created an experiential store in South Korea that doubles as a futuristic art installation. I won't play the video, but it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I don't really understand this investment except as brand, just embellishing their brand and exploring what can be done. Ray-Ban is collaborating with Facebook on new glasses. You thought wearable technology had come and gone, but actually it's coming back. They're much lighter and more practical. And that will be with us very shortly. And then Prada has now a virtual model They don't need human models anymore. They have Candy. It's the name of their model who's promoting their fragrance called Candy. They call it their muse, and their tagline is rethink reality. So, of course, fashion is pushing the envelope on immersive and virtual experiences. They have to be cutting edge, right? So that's happening in the fashion world and is not lost on a whole generation of consumers. So theme parks, honestly, we don't have much time for. You've all, hopefully, some of you have been to theme parks. And we're just seeing this transition. It's been going on for years, from sort of this kinesthetic experience to sensorial, transmedial immersion. Those of you who've been to Universal, you've seen the new Harry Potter rides. It's incredible, the new technology. I went a couple of years ago in Florida, and you look up and there's Harry Potter flying next to you, and he looks over at you and speaks to you, and it's just jarring because it feels so real. This is happening. A great example of this is Universal Studios in Beijing. They just created a partnership to integrate gaming technologies into their theme park experience. And essentially, you know, what's happening here is the blurring line between fantasy and reality is one of the macro trends here, and they're doing it very intentionally, drawing people into these experiences. Just kind of look, this is a theme park trailer. It's a couple of kids looking at their phone, and then what's real? Is the dinosaur real? Oops. I just love here how they try to blur the line between what is real and what is not. Okay, you get the picture. Disney, back in December, patented a new projection technology that allows you to see a three-dimensional object in front of you without wearable devices in connection with their theme parks. We actually read the trademark application. Marco can tell you more about that if you're interested. Simultaneous localization and mapping. They track your eyes, I believe, so the computer knows where you're looking. And this is a breakthrough because you can now see images of things that look real but are not, of course, without wearing goggles or glasses. And this is the best example of that we could find. So hyper reality, Disney is in the hyper reality business very much so already. So I'm not going to spend any more time on theme parks. But just to say that augmented reality, virtual reality interest is growing every day, particularly amongst younger folks, teens and young adults now who grew up gaming and really expect augmented experiences of one sort or another. Briefly touch on nightlife and sort of bleeding into art installations. Any of you who may be aware, thousands of people are going out to hear DJ promotions in different venues in cities every weekend. The visual effects are astonishing, which is enabled by advances in lighting technology over the past 10 years. You're really seeing incredible activity in the EDM, the electronic dance music field. Tomorrowland is the sort of the biggest electronic dance music festival in the world in Belgium. They have 200,000 people each night, I think for 2 nights. So they're able to sell they're able to accommodate 400,000 people. But of course, COVID hit and they couldn't have their festival. So they invested instead in a virtual experience that actually allowed them to sell tickets, because they sell out in about 10 minutes. Their whole festival sells out very, very quickly. And so I want you to just see a little bit. The first thing you're going to see here is video of the actual 2019 Tomorrowland Festival. Just look at the intensity of the visual effects.
You, the people of tomorrow, celebrate 15 years of magical music together.
All right, now we're transitioning to the virtual experience that they offered last year. They essentially commission artists to recreate their physical space as a virtual space. And then they're able to program live DJs into their virtual space. And I don't know how many millions of tickets they sold, but it's a great example of a commercial producer leveraging their asset and creating a hybrid experience that allows them to serve way, way, way more people worldwide. And we'll kind of come back to this. So many excellent examples of immersive installations. The best example of this is the Dark Matter project in Berlin, which is described as a multidimensional parallel world of light, space, and sound. It's in a giant factory, and people walk through and go through different installations. I don't know what the audio experience is here. I imagine it's pretty intense. You know, it's sort of almost like a nightlife experience, even though it's an art, it's framed as an art installation. Of course, Berlin is the nightlife capital of the world. So what's important here is this idea of losing one's awareness of one's surroundings, right? And remember, that was the very definition of an immersive experience, is kind of getting lost in the sensorial experience. Okay. We finally get to Visual Art Museum. I'm sorry for all of that non-art stuff, but I wanted you to know that the immersive experiences are a part of our culture, and it goes much beyond art and entertainment. Of course, we have to start with Van Gogh and immersive art experiences. this didn't start with Van Gogh. There was a good deal of work before that, but it really broke through in terms of public adoption. And this draws on projection mapping technologies, and it just creates a completely new kind of experience where, juxtaposed with sort of looking at a work of art in a museum hanging on a wall to having mediated experiences of all kinds. So for those of you who've not been to a Van Gogh exhibition, first of all, there are 5 producers of immersive Van Gogh exhibitions. Generally, they project on the walls and on the floor, but not on the ceiling because that's where the projectors are hanging. But this gives you a kind of sense of what it's like. It's such an accessible experience. It allows people to arrive more or less when they want to. It's time ticketing. When you get there, you get there. You can stay as long as you like. They're on a loop. So the one I saw every 35 minutes renews, and you kind of realize you're seeing something over again, and then you can leave if you want or stay. You can walk around. You really kind of design your own experience. There's a lot of autonomy ceded to the audience. And it's animation art, it's digital art. At times they show images of Van Gogh's paintings, but at times the artist will take just a flower or even a petal of flowers and fill the whole room with it. So it's very much derivative, but in a very, very, I think, beautiful way. And the imagery is just arresting. So the big 5 here, you can see Australia, the largest producer of Van Gogh experiences was Australia, Belgium, 2 from Canada, and 1 from France. The Australian one has sold 8.5 million. Lord only knows by now what that is, 70 cities. The Belgium less, they call that and it's just crazy how they blur the branding of their experiences to intentionally obfuscate which experience this is. The public has no idea which one they're getting, nor do I think they necessarily care. And in some cases, 2 different producers have been into the same marketplace. So the numbers of tickets being sold are just insane. And at best we can tell the gross across all of these is north of $500 million worldwide. So this is big money. I do want to note, if you say that this is commercial activity we don't have a crack at, actually, Tom Gabbard, who's the CEO of the Blumenthal Performing Arts Center in Charlotte, actually kind of figured this out. Early last year, he approached the Canadian producer Lighthouse Immersive and crafted a 50-50 partnership. They ran out, found a warehouse in Charlotte. It took them 3 months. It was a wildly accelerated process. They built out 70,000 square feet, installed the exhibition. They were going to run it for 3 months. It wound up running for 7 months. They had 300,000 visitors, 80% of whom were new to them. They also engaged local artists to make gift shop items, which has been a windfall for local artists. And the net gain to the Blumenthal Performing Arts Center was $5 million during COVID. Tom is now looking to acquire a new a new space in Charlotte that will be a permanent space dedicated to immersive experiences. So I just wanted to give you that example. We won't watch their video here, but folks, Van Gogh is the tip of the iceberg. Here comes Monet. I think Monet just opened in Los Angeles a couple weeks ago. Frida, there are 2 Frida immersive experiences out there coming at us. Klimt, Picasso, they get into rights issues. Van Gogh worked for everyone because the rights were publicly available. That's not so much the case with contemporary artists, but they're being licensed. Some of you may have heard of the was it the Basquiat exhibition in New York, where his sisters actually built a space for an immersive installation about him and his work. So it's not just an exhibition, it's an immersive experience. So this is coming, folks. This is here. This content is all created and it's beginning to tour. And there's Banksy, and then in outside of contemporary art and the sciences, all sorts of immersive experiences are coming. They will be in Phoenix one way or another, as well as every other major market. The Louvre has created an immersive experience about the Mona Lisa, one painting, which actually is running now. We hope to find out more about that. And of course, Netflix is now licensing its shows. The Bridgerton Experience, maybe some of you have heard of this, is open now in Los Angeles and Denver and Washington, I think, and maybe one or two more cities. The Queen's Ball, those of you who watch Bridgerton know about this. It's selling out, and they're doing this in historic hotels and ballrooms, and making boatloads of money. So this is all happening, folks. This is not speculative. The time has come. Immersive experiences are already defining culture, and they have been defining education actually for many years. There are so many examples of now overlaying interactivity into immersive art experiences that actually allows the visitor to have some agency over their experience and actually to co-create the artistic experience itself. Team Lab is one of the major labs doing this work. They're based in Tokyo, and they've done really gorgeous work for many museums around the world. This is a fun little trailer of their work, including some work for the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. I don't know if any of you have been to any of these facilities and seen these exhibitions, but more and more people are going. The technology is okay as you walk around. Sometimes things change. It's not dramatic. There's sensors following you. They're sensing you as you walk through an exhibition. Okay, so you get the sense here. Onion Lab is another one of the major studios doing interactive installation work. I won't show that so much, but the point I want to make is about interactivity, right? Is this kind of new expectation for public engagement. Obviously, it's a form of personal expression. It's very difficult to make conventional art programs interactive. The audience is historically a passive witness to the work. Of course, more and more exhibitions are interactive, and performing arts programs can be interactive. I gave this presentation at the Chorus America conference last week, and they were, talking about where they try to get people to clap along and even sing along. And there's elements of interactivity, but of course, this is all moving. I wanted to add this because I know some of you are museums, are representing museums or other cultural visitor destinations. The technology is moving so quickly here. There's a firm in the UK called Immersion, and they've done this installation at the Hancock Museum, which is really projecting a three-dimensional object in front of you. They also use this technology called Deep Frame, which is a floor-mounted display that essentially is the largest augmented reality display. And I want to show you a video of some kids watching a dinosaur exhibition using this technology.
it looks like it's in real life. It looks really cool. I think takes you back in time, so you know what it's like. Really like to see the dinosaurs and stuff.
I think it's fab, especially for the likes of my friend son who's autistic and he's like really into dinosaurs. Catches his attention.
It's excellent. I think it's very realistic. It gets the children engaged rather than a skeleton because they can.
Okay. You hear that? It gets the children engaged rather than looking at a skeleton. You know, and what I take away from this, sorry, is that so much of this technology has educational implications for how people learn and offers new ways of learning. And so there's so much potential to develop these technologies for learning purposes, not just entertainment. New facility in San Francisco, maybe some of you have heard of this, called the Unreal Garden. It's an experiential space commercial entity, opened last fall, uses Microsoft technology, and you have to wear a headset. Visitors can, there are 9 different artistic exhibitions. This is essentially augmented reality overlaying with real world objects. So Bonnie, I want you to speak to this later as a, you know, there's wildlife being depicted here. There's that frog again, that virtual frog. You know, Bonnie, maybe the zoo needs a new mascot that's a virtual frog. Okay. Just another example in the science realm is Time Studios, a Canadian studio, is collaborating with NASA on a virtual reality tour of the space station. You'll be able to go into a physical facility and feel like you're on the International Space Station. Again, educational work. It's a new way of learning, exploring. Let's see if this loads. Maybe this is not going to cooperate with us. That's
It was amazing.
It was almost life-changing.
Explore the International Space Station as you journey through an out-of-this-world virtual reality experience that will leave you breathless.
The first few steps that you take into the room don't even feel real. It's just stars underneath you.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really experience what the astronauts experience.
You can go any direction you want. You can explore.
okay. Enough on that. You get the general idea here. Okay. Let's keep moving. So I want to also just speak for a second about transparency, because it takes on another meaning different from the one that we normally think of. And transparency is the abandonment of visual rectangles. So your phone, your laptop screens, and the abandonment of screens is the ultimate goal of transparency, so that you don't need to see a device, a device that does your mediating. You're actually in a fully immersive environment that is mediated, and you're not having to reconcile with a visual rectangle. I probably don't need to tell you about all the selfie museums that have popped up around the world. Meow Wolf being sort of the leader of the pack. There's so many all over the world. It's too many to, what's this about? It's about sharing, right? It's about creating places where people can go to sort of document their experience and share it with their friends. And so you have whole facilities and programs now that are designed for sharing. And this is very provocative. What does that mean for those of us who actually forbid sharing in our facilities? Meow Wolf has really been the breakthrough artistic force in immersive multimedia experiences. Of course, their original facility was in Santa Fe. They've now branched out into other cities. I just love Meow Wolf because it's a group of artists who are capitalizing on their creativity and making buckets and buckets of money. They're collaborating with commercial producers. They're collaborating on the Sphere in Las Vegas. They're collaborating with other commercial producers and really leveraging their talent. We don't, explore the Meow Wolf website, look at their facilities, see what they're doing. It's really amazing. But again, this is really about sharing. Digital cultural centers are popping up around the world. Montreal, Barcelona, Milan, and other cities. Super Blue is a new digital cultural center in Miami. They're really on the radar. I believe they're intending to have Super Blue facilities in other major cities around the world. But they're really venues for the exploration and promotion of digital content. And Montreal seems to be kind of a hub for immersive technologies.
And this is really about sharing with
there's a
the
facility there
Montreal
called
audience,
Oasis.
eventually a larger international audience, positive perspective on life, a positive perspective on things that we feel matter today. And really the objective is for visitors to exit the exhibit with feeling energized, feeling wanting to take actions on things in their own life. It's really the purpose of the exhibit. When it
Great. Thank you.
It actually became something
for that. Digital Cultural Center in Milano called Meet Digital. And my question for you is, where is the Digital Cultural Center in Phoenix or Arizona? Where will that be? So performing arts, I just want to transition now. This whole transition from transport to presence, remember we were talking about, and even just a few years ago, it was hard to imagine we'd be able to make some of these transitions. But the immersive technologies have really catapulted us forward. It is a bewildering landscape from a lexicographic standpoint. You have all these different kinds of technologies and experiences. I just want to say that immersive experiences can involve no technology at all. We'll see an example of that in a second. Passive live immersive hybrid experiences, passive hybrid with live interaction, physically active immersive theater, virtual experiences, then hyper reality experiences, augmented reality. I mean, it's daunting just to try to navigate the language around this programming territory, but that's what we're trying to do. That's what we must do, is wrestle to the ground this complexity to understand where the creative opportunities are for us, so that we can bring our creative sensibilities and creative talents to this arena before commercial producers steamroll us, take all of the demand out of the marketplace, and leave us with peanuts. Now's my opportunity to berate you. I can't log into Facebook, I don't know about you, and not see this candlelight experience advertisements. It's a company called Fever that produces these. They were just like a website promoting a ticket reselling website, and now they're producing candlelight experiences around the world. 90 cities, 2.8 million attendees. You do the math. They just had an investment of $290 million from Morgan Stanley. Folks, these people went to Walmart and bought candles and turned them on and called it a candlelight experience. This is as low tech as it gets. And to me, this just exemplifies public interest in an experience. They're not selling artists. There's sometimes they're selling a theme, you know, some of it's kind of pop programming, some of it's classical. I don't know that people know or care. They're going to a candlelight experience. And this is such a paradigm shift. They don't have to know what's on the program because they're buying an experience. And it enrages me to think that some of you could be turning on candles and offering candlelight concerts and grossing millions of dollars. Because we just haven't managed that paradigm shift from programming that is repertoire driven, artist driven, to programming that is an experience. Those of you at the Garden, you figured this out, right? With Chihuly, your other installations, it's an experience. People don't have to know in advance what it is. It's an experience, and they love it. And that's, you know, it's a wonderful example. And I'm sure some of others of you have that. At the zoo, you have your holiday immersive experience, and people come by the hundreds of thousands. So this is where, if you want to speak to a larger marketplace, you have to start thinking about experiences. Let me keep going here. The Curtis Institute in Philadelphia just recently did an experiment called Immersive Scheherazade. They created a room with multiple screens, and they put the conductor in the middle, a small scale. They're trying to figure out, like, is there a second venue where they can do small scale work in an immersive format? We're going to skip over that. There's a lot of interesting work going on with digital artists collaborating with musicians or music. Impermanent paintings, I kind of love that. This is an example of two artists. The artists you see in the picture here are not pianists. These are player pianos. The artists are digital artists sitting at their laptop making art, digital art, during the music. So, you know, you can argue with this. It's the artistic connection between the music and the art is maybe not great, but this is something we need to do as a sector, is figure out visualizations and make them artistically integral, because so much of what I'm seeing now is just like people just gobbling up any visualizations and feeling like it's art. It's like being in an early Windows screensaver, right? It's just pretty pictures. And just imagine what we can do with the artistic work that we know. Here's a project from France called Virtual Harmony. Someone built a dome for LED projections. They ostensibly mic'd the orchestra, and through a MIDI interface created live visualizations with classical music. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't particularly find these visualizations compelling or connected to the music. It kind kind of like digital artists gone wild. Certainly lots to look at, but to me, this just shows how early we are in the developmental cycle of music visualization. Okay. Now, I want to show you something from, there we go. We're starting to see the integration of movement-based art and technology, mixed reality piece. This is the work of a Canadian company called 4D Art. Here we go. Here you see a live actor interacting with a hologram. Really begins to create new opportunities for storytelling. And you're seeing integration of movement and computer technology. There's more examples of this. This is a passive hybrid experience with live interaction. So let me show you a video here of a dancer with projection sensors and creating an abstracted image behind the dancer. Okay. So we're just seeing so much more interdisciplinary, integrating new technologies and different artistic inputs, and really creating whole new. I mean, the grandfather of in the theatrical world, of course, is the Punch Drunk Company from the UK and their Sleep No More production. Surely all of you have at least heard of that. They call that promenade theater. The audience walks around, they experience, they create their own experience. We describe that as immersive theater. Punch Drunk has just announced a partnership with Niantic, the producer of gaming software like Pokemon Go. And they are now intending to unveil their first collaboration, which will be a citywide adventure that feels like immersive video gaming happening in the real world. So this is, they're way out front, creating new kinds of theatrical experiences that we can only imagine right now. Secret Cinema, I love this. It's UK, it's coming to the US. This is a commercial producer that recreates famous scenes from movies and sells thousands of tickets. People come in costume and everyone feels like they are playing a part in the scene that they are recreating. They've grossed 10 million from each of their large events. And guess who is their new investor? So it's only a matter of time before Secret Cinema comes to Phoenix with scenes from Star Wars. Yeah, so check this out. So you have professional actors playing certain roles. All attendees are in costume of some sort or another. They have sort of handlers who tell people where to go and what to do. Everyone has a role, a job to do. I'm told people go back over and over again because it's a different experience every time. Some nice stagecraft. A saber fight. And of course, they show scenes from the original film, right? So audience is becoming active creators. So secret cinema is coming. People are exploiting their assets in new ways involving immersive programming. Royal Shakespeare Company has been doing some work with motion capture technology, creating live virtual experiences. This production of Dream, Midsummer Night's Dream, was staged just a few months ago. So these are
stage.
avatars of
All the
real
men and
actors.
women, merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts.
Okay, so I have to keep moving. The Royal Opera House in London got in the game with an immersive hyper-reality experience on one of their stages called Current Rising. You know, there's just a lot of experimentation going on now. People are just trying
Current
to see
Rising
what
is
they
the
can
world's
do.
first opera created specifically for hyperreality.
Well, hyperreality is virtual reality plus. So we take the standard virtual reality headset. Well, obviously we use the latest and greatest of those. And you have a backpack computer, which gives you sort of the best possible visual quality that you can get at this point in time. And then we add to that. So firstly, you have multi-users. You have, in this case, a group of 4 people. You also have a physical space that's dedicated to the experience. So what it means is that as you move around in virtual reality, you're physically moving around in real space.
So we're opening Current Rising in the Royal Opera House on the Limbury stage. So the audience will enter the theatre, go onto the stage and start their experience there.
Okay, you get the idea. I'm going to move along here and get to this wonderful, wonderful image of Sir Simon Rattle, the London Symphony Orchestra's conductor, who was fitted out with motion sensors on his upper body and arms, and an artist created a live digital work of art from his movements. Watch this, extraordinary. So for me, this starts to link the music and the visuals in an authentic, artistic way. The genesis of the visuals is Simon Rattle's movement. And you have an artist adding a layer, a huge layer of digital art to that. They call this motion visualization. And I just think that starts looking beautiful in a way, that the other visualizations are just sort of pretty images. So synchronization, so much work to do artistically to really make this more than just pretty pictures. Holograms, some of you are aware, there have been various attempts over the years at creating holograms of artists and having events. A famous scary story about Michael Jackson. Some of you in the opera field may know there was a Maria Callas hologram concert tour. Maybe some of you actually went to it. I mean, I do want you to watch this.
Hologram presents Callas in concert. Hologram tour.
So this is an actress playing Maria Callas. What you're hearing is Maria Callas's voice, but of course they didn't have video of Maria Callas, so they hired an actress. So you're watching a hologram singing with a live orchestra. And you kind of forget that what you're watching isn't real until she's looking at the cards and she's about to throw them in the air. But it's digital. So the cards are suspended in the air. And all of a sudden you're reminded this is digital art, not real art. Fascinating, isn't it? And of course, our friends ABBA, hopefully you all know what they're doing in London right now. They've notoriously declined $1 billion offer to tour many years ago. They've come together. They've built a 3,000 seat capacity venue. This show opened a few weeks ago in London. It's a temporary theater designed to be kind of demounted and reused. They've just spent 3 months in a motion capture studio recording themselves.
They did
performing
say yes
their
to
own
a tour,
songs.
but one with a twist. The idea is to recreate ABBA in the form of digital avatars that'll perform with a live band in a specially built arena in London.
There is something irresistible in this, being able to replicate yourself in zeros and ones and on huge screens with 3,000 people in the audience. It's going to be something spectacular.
It hasn't been done before. That's the intriguing part of this. That's what's tempting.
People have often talked about whether you can create
This
either
is
people who lived
fascinating
in the past
video.
or
We don't have
people when they were
time
younger.
to see it.
We had
But I believe this was reviewed, and it's been reviewed very favorably. And they're sold out for months and months. They will tour this for years and years and years and make billions of dollars. And they're not just touring; they've essentially created their legacy for all time. And what I really take away from this is that using this technology to capture artists, and this is the first example of living artists creating their own avatars. Imagine if we had volumetric video of Luciano Pavarotti or Pablo Casals or Vladimir Horowitz or even famous artists or even Picasso, painting. Like for educational value, it's a form of cultural preservation that we should not ignore. This is a motion capture studio in San Francisco. I am fascinated by the artistic possibilities of doing motion capture work with artists, classical music artists, with opera singers, with dancers, and seeing if we can create viable artistic experiences with avatars as performers in small scale environments. We're going to skip over this because I need to wrap up in just a couple minutes here. I want to kind of close sound. There's so much focus now on visualization technology that we kind of forget about sound, as the other sense. And the technological advances in audio technology are just extraordinary. And the capabilities that allows us to create immersive audio experiences. During COVID, we all understood a need to create digital programs to engage people at home. And I understand that, and we did that. But more than half, our research suggests that more than half of people at home were watching and listening to that content on a laptop with really lousy speakers. And if you're an orchestra, I don't really know, or an opera company, if you can accomplish your mission if people are listening on a little laptop with little speakers, and I think we've kind of lost sight of that we have to offer a premium audio experience in order to accomplish our mission. So I'm looking very carefully here at immersive sound experiences. There are great examples around the world of this. Genelec is one of the
audio. Then coming back to stereo
is one of the producers of audio installation equipment. This gentleman is one of the world's leading experts on
the emotional impact
recording
the listener
and playback in immersive configurations.
The shape and design of this room is slightly different from the considerations you make for a traditional stereo.
I think if let me just see if I can fast forward here and show him the miking of above
at the recording menu.
The mics are at different levels because now we have sound not just left to right, but front to back and top to bottom.
At microphone area. At the recording location. This is basically.
I'm doing some brainstorming with orchestras to try to figure out if there's a possibility that they could hang a 3D camera over the orchestra and simulcast into a second space in an immersive format where there's projection against four walls, the audience is in the middle of the room with an immersive audio installation so that if you walk over towards the violins, you actually hear them, or if you walk over towards the double basses, you actually hear them. And it's almost like being in the orchestra. And if that would be a second space for a live concert in a different format for a different audience. Lots of action going on now in terms of 3D audio. Too much to go over here. I'm gonna just skip to the end here. So I'm so sorry for dragging you through that. I know that was a lot of material. Touring artists the days of touring maybe are over. I have a whole section here. I'm probably going to skip through what's happening in commercial entertainment with virtual experiences and augmented experiences. Coachella this year offered for the first time an augmented experience using a special gaming technology. Snapchat is partnering with Live Nation to offer an augmented reality experience at popular music concerts using Snapchat lenses, for those of you who know what that is. Big festivals are getting into virtual reality in a big way. Some of that involves headsets. The whole Travis Scott concert on Fortnite, which attracted 27 million viewers. We're not going to watch that. A new platform for viewing concerts, virtual reality experience of concerts. And this is what's leading me to believe that people might actually stop buying tickets to these big stadium shows and instead prefer to have the virtual reality experience, which makes them much closer to the artist and have a much different experience. And that's kind of a no-end experience. You can go as many times. You can spend as much time as you want at the show, which is just a whole different idea. So what does all this add up to? We've been just trying to sort out all these different kinds of analog to digital experiences and mental to sensorial experiences. And at least there's digital, immersive, and virtual is kind of one way of looking at this, but there's immersive experiences that involve no technology. There's immersive experiences that are exclusively virtual. I can tell you definitively that immersive experiences have already reshaped the marketplace. And those of us who want to pay attention to attracting kind of the next generation, and by that I mean kind of 45 and under, we are going to have to address the expectation of augmented experiences of some sort. So really the question I throw to you all and to our panelists is what are the opportunities here, and how do we go about navigating this bewildering territory of programming possibilities? It's kind of the Wild West. It's ours for the taking if we see the possibilities and we can manage to do the R&D. So my final thoughts are just, now we're moving audiences back into more active and participatory modes of engagement. We are late to the game, folks. Commercial producers are investing hundreds of millions of dollars in this technology. It's only a matter of time before Broadway producers create immersive versions of their shows. Disney rents factories and spaces in your market and brings Beauty and the Beast, the immersive experience. It's all coming. And we have to figure out what role we want in this space. It's going to require significant investment. The only thing I can tell you is that if we all try to do this independently, we will fail colossally. We're going to have to learn to collaborate in new ways, both in terms of artistic collaborations across organizations and collaborations between and amongst funders to create the pools of capital that are needed to do the R&D, to bring forward exciting new programs. If we all do it ourselves, we're never going to make it. So I'm concerned, very concerned about what the future looks like for entertainment marketplace and nonprofits. On the same token, there are magnificent creative opportunities sitting right in front of us if we can see them. So with that, I'm going to pop out of my presentation and come back into the room and ask our panelists also to turn on their videos. And there we go. So we have Jake and Bonnie and Joe, and I would love it. For the sake of quick introductions, let's just go. Joe, why don't you give a quick introduction?
Sure. Joe Spector, President and General Director of Arizona Opera. I've been here for about 6 years, and of course, a third of that was through the pandemic, and we've had a chance to experiment with a number of modes of expressing what opera is, and really happy to be part of this conversation, explore the topic.
Thanks. Bonnie?
Hi there, I'm Bonnie Mendoza. I'm the Chief Operating and Financial Officer here at the Phoenix Zoo. I've been here just about 19 years and definitely seen a transition in the expectations of our audience. We are still very focused on remaining true to our mission, inspiring people to care about the natural world. And we try to have experiences that augment the traditional visit to the zoo. We've tested a few things along the way, and I see potential use of that virtual frog in explaining maybe animals that have gone extinct, and then bringing that to reality and sharing the actions that people need to take so that doesn't occur more. But happy to be part of the panel. Great content, Alan.
Thanks.
And Alan, just to jump in really quickly, would you mind unsharing your screen so we can all have a full view of the panelists?
Didn't realize I was still sharing it, so thank you.
No problem.
What do let me just. Jake, why don't you tell us about your lab at ASU?
Sure. You should be looking for a red tab that says Stop Share. So I'm Jake Penholster. I'm the Executive Dean in the Herberger Institute for Design and the Arts at Arizona State University, and then also the founding director of the new ASU Media and Immersive Experience Center, the building you see behind me that we're about to open up in downtown Mesa. The Mix Center is devoted to this type of work. It does house the Poitier New American Film School, but we have several graduate programs and a huge number of faculty and spaces devoted to the development and prototyping of immersive experiences of all kinds, both with technology and not. So I do want to just open up by saying, like, as a resource locally, we're always looking for partnerships. Myself and my students have already done immersive experiences for a number of the organizations that are already here. We just recently produced one at the Idea Museum in Mesa. I've done work with Arizona Opera on very immersive, if still presentationally proscenium experiences before. So I do want to say, just treat us as a resource. And I'd like to examine the notion of potentially hosting a local summit on this event at the Mix Center once we can get it open and show off some of its capabilities, including the immersive and spatialized sound arrays and multi-user VR experiences and so on.
Awesome. Awesome, Jake. Well, thank you. I imagine my presentation was a version of torture for you because you've studied this for many years. You're familiar with so much of this, but
there were some new ones in there.
Okay.
That was impressive. Yeah, it was good.
I'm dying to fly to London and see the ABBA show. So what do you see, Jake, as I want to go to all of our panelists and give you a kind of a clear shot to react to this. But Jake, what do you see as some of the more promising territories for museums and performing arts organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that you talked about it towards the end that is no one's really quite cracked with the commercial IP yet is the notion of user agency and effect on story. And the notion of, and particularly the notion of creating stories that are unique to a particular audience or region, or developed as original work inside of a particular audience, a culture, targeted on a particular neighborhood or on something locally. Now, I think that there's always going to be room for the Disney level IP stuff, but I think carving out things that are unique to the population and that are truly unique to the experience is something that is going to be the domain of nonprofits and more local organizations. So I think that has some real merit. I also think some things that partnerships with restaurants and hoteliers and people who are creating other parts of experience and sensory is another unexplored notion. We have a couple of great immersive bars and restaurants here in Phoenix already. The Century Grand Complex that's on Indian School. With Undertow and Platform 18 and Greyhound RX. There's some great experiences. I've just talked with the architect that designed those experiences last night. He's interested in doing pop-ups with performing arts companies and museum companies. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to examine story, locality, specificity, originality, all these things with these commercial properties lack. And I think that we can find the resources to help do that, as you said, Alan, collectively and collaboratively, then we'll carve out a good niche for the nonprofits to do well in this new world.
Fantastic. So Bonnie, can you give us some of your reactions to this material and tell us a little about your thinking over at the zoo?
Sure. I mean, the idea of collaborations is huge for us. Financial resources are always tough to come by. So I think it makes sense to do that in our local community. We have a lot of support for all of our respective organizations. I think most of the visitors here at the zoo are local people. So while there's a fear potentially of Vegas pulling some of our folks away for one-off visits, I still believe we have very dedicated audiences here. The zoo in particular, very young audience, young folks with young kids. I think it's critical for us to listen to what our audiences want and come up with innovative approaches to messaging our mission to them. We have already, with Zoo Lights this year, we're trying to reinvent some aspects of Zoo Lights so that it's less of a passive experience in watching our light show, but engaging people in different vignettes throughout the zoo. We're watching our competition throughout the valley, so we know that that's important to do. We several years back brought an artist from New York, Russ Ronit, who had some illuminated backlit pieces of art, primarily to animals that are endangered or threatened, and had some of his pieces actually on projector that would show them eventually disappearing. Again, trying to tell our story, but still in an innovative approach. So it'll catch people's attention, and then hopefully they'll hear the message. But I definitely think there's room and a need actually for us to step into this arena to the extent that our financial resources can support.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bonnie. So Joe, you live in the rarefied world of opera. What do you see? You know, are you going to do Carmen, the immersive experience, or
Well,
you're
no,
going to have Valhalla, the restaurant? Or,
I'm sorry I hadn't seen that Callas presentation. That was
no.
actually my first time being aware of that. But you know, I'm very proud of what Arizona Opera has done in terms of product I should say, differentiation, even within the traditional immersive realm of the theater. And I really appreciate you starting your presentation with acknowledging that immersive is physical. It can have a technological aspect to it. Because I really feel the same way. And even within that traditional immersive experience of the theater, we've differentiated by presenting pieces like traditional operas, like Tosca will do next season. We'll have an opera that's very projection driven about the experience of soldiers, US soldiers returning from war and their experience of becoming part of society and becoming whole again. We'll have musical theater. So each of these kinds of offerings we don't think of as immersive in the context of this kind of conversation, but they really are, and they offer different aspects. What I think we miss in terms of the immersive experience, and these are elements that are often out of control for us, are, you know, sort of the experience when you enter the auditorium in the seat, you know, you know, we haven't, for instance, pioneered the Chase parking garage experience, and we probably wouldn't get very far if we did. But they are real aspects of what people experience in those live performances. But on top of that, we've produced a film, our first feature-length film that was one of our COVID pivots. You know, we've had you know, digital offerings in terms of podcasts and video series. But I just wanted to share that one of the things that sort of had the most organic reach in terms of, especially in relationship to the amount of investment we made, was completely analog. It was our graphic novel project that's based on Carmen. We have a graphic novel that we're launching. We had a Kickstarter campaign funded in 2.5 days using, you know, these world famous, you know, DC and Marvel comic artists and this classic story of Carmen. And I think what we see in there is that there really is a blue ocean of creating different experiences. That one goes. You used this paradigm of mental immersion versus sensorial, and in the case of that graphic novel project, I think that leans more towards the mental immersion. The root of this question here, it's overwhelming, and it's incredibly exciting to see all of these different expressions of art in these modes that you've presented. And it's almost too much to handle in an 80-minute period of time. But what I find grounding is coming back to the question, and you really did frame this up. You talked about our, you know, what is this? How does this relate to our mission? You know, and you have to start with that. Why do we do what we do? There are all kinds of products that have a bigger marketplace than opera or than zoos and so forth. So I think if we start with why, who are we doing it for? How are we going to pay for it? These kinds of questions can help us organize ourselves. And if it's not mission aligned for our purposes, we shouldn't be doing it. Tammy, I don't want to call you out here, but that last piece that I think Jake got to, and Alan, collaboration, that in itself, you know, as a subject to tackle, how do we get this done? Because, you know, when your day-to-day life, as mine is, you know, do I have enough development staff to, you know, to make it to our June 30 fiscal year end with strength? It's hard to think about how can I revolutionize holographic in-home operatic performances. But no one in this field is going to be more excited about the opportunity to try that than me. So Jake, I'm going to follow up with you about what we can do to you know, to try something. But I agree. In a period coming out of pandemic and so forth, you know, consolidation of effort is going to be so important to maximizing our impact, and that's what it all comes down to. So those are a few impressions.
Well, that's great, Joe. Thank you. I've got. What is the second act of La Boheme? There's a cafe.
There's the cafe. Yeah.
What's it called?
The Cafe Momus.
Momus. Yes.
Yeah.
I think you could create Momus, the immersive
Oh yeah, no, we've
Experience?
actually talked about doing exactly that, bringing our La Boheme set into the black box and having
Yes.
like a speakeasy in
Yeah.
the Opera Center.
Yeah, run for 3 months.
Hey, Joe, you said something that made me just briefly, I wanted to mention this, the whole excitement around technological advances and the immersive experience. We can actually use that technology in our fundraising, if you will, to get donors excited about what is the new lion exhibit going to look like once it's created, and what will the visitor be able to experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the impediments, you and I have very different base, demographics. And so, I'm for instance, really excited about the idea of where VR could head over the long term with opera, but when you have an older patron base, what would it take to implement that, to get the instruction training out? Or are there simpler methods of sort of distributing the technology? I mean, my kids would be all over it and they'd figure out how to engage with it. But I agree with you completely. If we can bring that in-home experience, a taste, that would be fantastic.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Joe, because I want to just share a quick story that we have to be clear about, as you say, Joe, who are we doing this for? Because if we're doing this for our current subscribers, that's one thing. But the Philadelphia Orchestra did visualizations to Beethoven's Missa Solemnis a couple weeks ago in Philadelphia. They collaborated with Refik Anadol, that digital artist, and I knew it would be a train wreck, so I went there and did focus groups before and after with audience members, and it was absolutely fascinating. Just listening to people talk about how difficult it is to reconcile their oral experience with the visual experience, and it was from most people's a failed experience, but they understood what they're trying to do is experiment with visualizations, and they support that, and they want to see the next experiment, even if they didn't like this one. And I thought that was really interesting. But it's difficult when you're an orchestra, and the frame of experimentation is your subscription season. So you're overlaying these experiments on top of a subscription schedule, and people are coming and getting something different than they thought they signed up for, and it's really hard. So hence the need, Jake, for a laboratory space, second spaces, black boxes, whatever, where you can do this work and really allow a different audience, to call a younger and more diverse audience, I would say. All right, let's open it up for questions or comments. I know there's a couple of you. If there's someone from the herd, I would actually love for someone to talk about your forthcoming immersive exhibition. And others of you, just put your hand up if you'd like to offer a comment or a question in our last 10 minutes here. Do we have anyone from the herd? I'm not sure. All right, well then let's just open it up. Anyone, any of you?
It looks like we have one comment in the chat.
Okay.
One question, pulling it up right now. Yes, so how cool would it be if we collectively had a projection mapping on all of our buildings to present content during a specific period of time during the year, and created a community engagement piece tied to our individual mission, but that also merged these in a community focus?
I just moved from Canada, so the stuff that's going on in Montreal and Canada, I'm familiar with. And for example, in Toronto, it's not necessarily architectural mapping, but Toronto uses architectural lighting to focus, key parts of the downtown, the CN Tower, the Sky Dome, significant architectural buildings. And my impression of having moved to Phoenix, it's a very welcoming community, but it's also one where there's the potential or existing collaborations that could occur, and the ability to use media really is tied to storytelling. I put in the early chat a project that I led at Science North, a multimedia show using motion capture to help drive the content and the story. Science Center did an architectural map on a fort to recreate scenes and stories of the past 400 years. We all have unique value proposition, but would there be an ability to weave those stories collectively into a narrative at a community level or even a wider level by using that technology to be able to do that? And the content can change from that perspective.
Yeah,
quite easily.
That's certainly a provocative image to hold in our heads, Guy. Thank you for that. Visible, there's Phoenix, visible from space. Any other comments or questions?
Can I throw out just one quick idea, Alan, and maybe you could respond to it? I think one of the things that I struggle with on this topic is differentiating between what we do for sort of marketing, expanding awareness versus what is about exploring the sort of the edges of what the product actually is. So like, what is opera at the end of the day? It's storytelling that's elevated through the human voice created in this particular sort of way. And you can play with almost every other variable in terms of presentation. So how do you think about, these opportunities in terms of that framework? And I just want to acknowledge that, creating a virtual opportunity, especially if it's on sort of a more PR or marketing aspect, isn't necessarily pushing you toward a full season subscription with a traditional, major gift type of model. I think it goes more towards a deeper, a long-term product differentiation. So,
right.
What do you think about that swirl of stuff?
Well, you have to go, keep going back to your fundamentals. I think people get tangled up in what's commercial and what's nonprofit, and I don't find that particularly helpful. But, opera is, as you noted earlier, about as immersive as it gets in terms of the different artistic components. It can be. I'm fascinated with installation work, like Punch Drunk, like taking a format that is more of an, I wouldn't necessarily start with the worst, but installation where act one of an opera was in one space, then people move to another space for act two, then move to another space. And it's, people feel like they're on the set with the singers, and it's more intimate, if you can call that immersive if you want, but I think there are ways of keeping it about the singing that adjust the format and the relationship of the audience with the artists that offer many possibilities.
Do you have thoughts about, you talked about the hundreds of millions of dollars that are, competing against us for the same set of attention. It's tricky. We can be very clever, but at the end of the day, having a brilliant idea can penetrate even without massive resources behind it. But
we have to learn how to do product development, R&D. Jake can speak to this better than I can. We have to, my experience with arts groups, Joe, is that they have to do it perfect the first time. And they spend themselves blind, lose money, and then forsake the experiment.
That's a good model there, Alan.
And Jake, prototyping, getting something up at the lowest possible cost, trying it out, trying it again, using research, and really developing programming at a very as low a cost as possible. I think is what you want to do, right, Jake? Or am I?
No, 100% correct. Because also the type of systems and software and stuff that you develop to create novel. There's plenty of stuff we can do off the shelf that's just about content development. The mediums of projection mapping and immersive displays and so on. If we want to do something that is just duplicating a Klimt or the Van Gogh or the something that's at an Artec house or Wonder Spaces and just add performance to it, that stuff's pretty reliable. It's been around for long enough now that we can do it, and it's top flight right off the bat. If we're trying to do something new, then those systems and those processes take refinement. It's like a process of like, we need to do that beta release. We need to do that 1.0, that 2.0 in order for it to really mature as a new thing. And I think that's one of the missions that we're trying to offer is the ability to create a prototyping space where something can be done without it being a huge capital investment. Now, I will say the thing that really could be transformative to the Phoenix market is something I think we mentioned on our prep call, is the notion of getting a big warehouse space that can be collectively used for this kind of thing as well. I mean, because this is a curricular venue as well as a a creative venue we have to share among a whole bunch of different stakeholders and programs. But if we had a space that was a raw space where we could experiment with this type of experience without it being taking up everybody's money-making venues or taking a whole bunch of extra time for construction and rigging because of the specificity of the architecture, that would be really useful.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, sorry, Alan, not to cut you off, but we do have one question in the chat that I want to make sure gets answered from Olivia Homewood. She says, do you have data on ticket pricing / attendance, etc. of all these different examples you gave? How many are companies sharing their net profits publicly? Do you have any examples? So on and so forth.
Commercial producers are not sharing their numbers. Charlotte shared their numbers with me because they're a nonprofit. They use their shuttered venues money to invest in the Van Gogh exhibition and essentially doubled their money. So ticket pricing, I mean, look at the published prices for Van Gogh. And you know, they're, I think people look at what people are charging in Las Vegas for live shows, for Area 15. I mean, all that data is public. I haven't done an overview of pricing, but eventually, I mean, people are paying through the teeth on the secondary market for tickets to see the ABBA show in London. And it's avatars, folks. This is what's so profoundly challenging to me is it's not live humans. People are paying to see avatars. And that's a paradigm shift, massive paradigm shift. Anyway, we're running out of time, Julie.
Do we want to close with any final thoughts?
Tammy, do you want to close us out? You've been a very attentive participant.
I'm happy to. I appreciate the scale of research that went into this, Alan. Thank you so much. It was, in fact, overwhelming. There's a lot out there, much of which I was not familiar with. But I'd love to find a way to continue this dialogue. Jake, you bring a really wide swath to this market, both from pragmatic experience as well as sort of theoretical. And I agree with Joe's earlier question: is there a way to to be more collaborative in this space? And I think that's something that we should all please don't just please let's keep that dialogue going. There was one last comment in the chat around working with students with autism and how some of that work might be able to be modified. I love that idea as well, because we know it's a growing population. It's also a organization or a cause that we work with at Flynn on the other side of the house and in the biosciences. So it'd be great to see the integration of something like that. But anyway, thank you so much for being here, everyone. Alan, as always, thank you for your thought leadership. You are a great provocateur, and that's what we're looking for, to keep us all on our feet and engaged in this market. And thanks everybody for taking time out of your day. It was great attendance. So.
Great to see you all. Thanks so much.